Hello and welcome to Dad and Kids Coding. We're going to work through the Advent of Code 2021, and there's 25 days of this. We're not probably going to get through all of them, but we'll see how far we get and have fun along the way, hopefully. I'm Dave, Dad.
I'm Thomas.
And together we're going to work through these. Last year we did a similar thing. We got through about a dozen of them, and some of them were quite long because we did every detail. We added the data and we copied it over and we saved to the repository and so on. And I think that was a little bit tedious. So if you want to see all the details, provide a link down below to last year's versions, and this year we'll go through them a little bit more quickly, with the assumption that you can pause and go over whatever you need. There's also a repository that has all the code for this, and we'll put a link to that in the description as well. So, the Advent of Code is 25 programming problems, each of which has a part A and a part B. And this is day one. And we're actually doing this on day two because we were slow getting started. But so this is day one. And the idea is you collect 50 stars. You get 2 stars for each day a star for each part of each day. So this problem is pretty straightforward. We have an input that looks like this, a sequence of numbers, and then we're going to calculate basically how many times those numbers increase. So it's pretty straightforward. And this is the data, the simplest data, and we're looking for the final result for this should be 7. And then there's a larger input, which I've already installed in the environment. That I don't know what the correct answer for that is, but once we have it working for this, then we'll try it with the larger one, and hopefully we'll get a number that we plug in here and submit, and hopefully we'll get a gold star for it. So let's go over to the code environment. So this is a Pharo environment. And we're going to do test-driven design for each of these. So that means that we're writing each day as a test. So here's day 1 test, and here was that input that we had, a sequence of numbers, and we're going to send that array a message saying day 1A because we're doing part A, and whatever that returns should be equal to 7. So if it is, then it's successful, and then we'll try it again on the data for day 1 and see what it returns. It won't return nil, but it will return some number, and we'll plug that number in and see if we get it right. So to move forward now, we'll just start running this test. And when we run the test, it fails because the instance of array, that's what this thing is, did not understand day 01A. So this is the array, and it didn't understand this message, which is not surprising because we didn't write any code for it yet. We just have the test. So we're going to implement that message. So we'll go here to where it says create, and we'll click on the plus, and it says define selector in, well, where do we want to define it? Well, we may as well put it in array. And we'll choose a protocol. For now, we'll just leave it unclassified, and then afterwards we'll associate it with the Advent of Code. So we'll just leave it as unspecified. And here we are, we're into the code. So here is the current environment where self is an array that has these values in it. And so we need to go through these values and see how many times the value increases, with the first one being no change. So let's do that. So we're going to say, basically, let's get the first value, or the previous value. We'll call it the previous value because as we work through the loop, it's going to be the value from the previous time through the loop. And let's just use the first value of the array. So the array is self. We're currently executing with the array as the current object. So self, and we'll ask for the first value. Okay, so let's just see what that is. One of the nice things about Smalltalk is we can ask to see the value at every point, and the result of that was a small integer, 199. Okay, and just for fun it shows us in other formats, but we don't care right now. But self first is the number 99, or 199. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to do. And then we need to go through the whole array, and every time we see that the value has changed, we'll add 1 to a count. So let's say self do, and so this do. So this is going to loop through the values, and we're looking for, so let's call this each. And what do we want to do? We want to say, we want to compare each, which is the current value. Or maybe we should call it current because that's what I just called it. So it's fairly common to call it each in Smalltalk, but I'm going to call it current. So let's just say current. So let's see if the current value is bigger than the previous value, and if that's true, then we are going to add 1 to our counter. So the count is count plus 1, and now we want to save the current value as the previous ones for the next time through the loop. So let's just say previous is current, and that's that. And then the final thing we want to do is we want to return the count, because the count is the number of times that current was larger than previous. So let's save this, and it says that the variable previous wasn't defined. We want it to be a temporary variable. And similarly, count was undefined, so let's make it a temporary variable as well. So now this could work. So let's proceed and see what happens. So we proceed, and we get an error because it says plus was sent to nil. And what that means is we're sending the message plus here to count. But count was never set to anything, so it initially has a nil value. So we need to initialize it to 0, presumably. So let's say count. Count is 0. And we'll save that. And it says I'm going to have to revert to the method from which the block originated. This is the block, this thing inside the do. So it's just, is that okay? Yes, it's okay. So it's compiled it now. So now let's try proceed again and see how we do. And we proceed, and it worked. This was equal to 7. That's good. And it also did the self data for day 1 and sent that the day 1 a message, and it returned 1288 instead of nil. So presumably 1288 is the correct answer. We don't know that for certain, but let's just go back to here and say that. So this is 1288. Save that. And now let's just run the test again to make sure that I did put in the right number. And I got this green box to say, yep, ran one test and it passed. Okay, so it looks like 1288 might be the correct answer. So let's go over to day of code and paste that in here as our what we believe to be the correct answer. And we got a gold star. Yay! Woo! So that's part A done. So let's continue to part 2. Okay, so this is the fun thing, is that the first part is usually pretty straightforward, and the second one is a little bit trickier. So here it says, considering every single measurement isn't as useful as you expected. There's too much noise in the data. Okay, so consider sums of a 3-measurement sliding window. Okay, again, using the above example, we have 199, 200, 208, and so on. So our sliding window is A, AB, ABC, and then B, CD, and then CD, E, and then D, E, F, D, E, F, G, F, G, H, and so on and so forth. Okay? So, start by comparing the first and second 3 measurement windows. Okay, so we compare the 199 to the measurement in the first window are marked A. So they're IC. They're these 3 values, 199, 200, 208. And then the second sliding window is this, B, so 200, 208, 210. And we're to compare the sum. So we compare the sum of the measurements, and the second window is larger than the sum of the first, so this is the first comparison increased. So we now need to count the number of times the sum of measurements in the sliding window increases from the previous sum. So compare A with B, then B with C, C with D, and so on. Stop when there aren't enough measurements left to create a new 3-measurement sum. Okay, so how do we go about doing this? So if we started off by remembering, so if we calculated the sum of the first 2 values, and so the question is, how do we remember which values we're comparing? So there's a few different possibilities. So that's one possibility, is just to do it, is to loop through like we did last time and remember the values. The other would be to calculate the sums and then loop through the same way as before. So that would mean adding the values, then the value shifted right by 1, and then the value shifted right by 2, or left by 2. So let's just try that. So here, when we do it this time, we should get that there are 5 sums that are larger than the previous sum. Okay, so let's go back to our code. And so we're going to do a similar 2 tests. Except again, now we don't know what this is going to be. And these aren't going to be day 1A, these are going to be day 1B. And day 1B for the simple data should equal 5. Okay, so let's save that and run our test again, and it'll run through the first 2 parts fine, and we get to the 3rd place, which is going to say we don't have day 1B defined, which is true. So again, we'll click create to create that, and we'll put it into array. And again, we'll leave it as unclassified for the moment. Okay, so now let's, so we've got self, and then we could get a version of self with let's just go back over here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 values, but we only do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 comparisons, because we have to have 3 full values. So that means we're going to discard some values from the end. Okay, so let's try that. So let's say n is self size, so get the size of this array minus 2. So that's the number of values we're going to do the comparison of. Now we want to take the first n values. So let's say self first n, and put parentheses around that. So let's just save this for the moment. N is undefined, so we'll make it a temporary variable. Okay, so we're good. So self first n, and let's just see what that is. So if we inspect that, oops, we have to restart, and I'm going to skip over this because I want n to have a value, and now n has a value. So now I can look at this, and so this is the value 199 up to 269. So it's just the first 8 values. So that gives us the first 8 values, but then we want to add the next 8 values and the next 8 values. So how would we do that? Well, we could say add let's try self all but first, and then ask for the first n of those, and then so let's see what that gives us. Well, let's just look at this part first. So inspect that, and that is starting from the second one through the 9th value. So again, we get 8 values, and I think that this will work, but let's just see. And if I inspect this, yes, I get the sum of the first pair and so on. So let's now add on plus self all but first 2. So here we're throwing away the first value and then taking the next n values. Here we're throwing away the first 2 values, and because n is size minus 2, that means that it's going to be the same size. So now if I look at this whole value and inspect that, I have 607, 618, 618. So going back over here, 607, 618, 618, 617. So I've got those values that I had before, okay, or that they suggested. So now we're ready to remember previous and count. Oh, let's save this. So let's call this the threesome. Okay, so let's save that, and again it says add that, and then we want to do basically the same thing as we did before. We want to set count to 0. I could go and copy the code, but it's almost as fast to type it. And previous was threesome first, and then threesome do current greater than wait a minute, okay, greater than previous. If current is greater than previous, then if that's true, then I want to add one to count. And regardless, I want to set previous to be equal to count. And then I want to return count. Okay, counts undefined, make it so, previous undefined, make it so, and let's just proceed and see whether we make it through the test. So we got 7 instead of, oh no, that's, okay, so I did not expect that. So let's debug this. So I'm going to do the command to debug the highlighted code. So I'm going to now step into that code and look at what's going on. So let's step through this. Okay, so threesome has 607, 618, 618, 617, 647, 716, 769, and 792. Okay, so it has exactly the 8 values that were expected to be here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we should see only 5 steps. So we're going to loop through. So previous is going to be threesome first, which is 607, which is right. And then we're going to loop through here. So if current is greater than previous, which it isn't, so count should stay 0. Oh, previous is count, that's not right. Previous is current. There we go. Sure. And let's just quit out of this and go back here and rerun our test. And now we got through the first part of the test, so it did the right thing. And it says that we got 1311 instead of nil. Okay. So let's put in 1311 here. And just run the test again, just to make sure we get the green box. Well, that's good. So let's go over here and say that it's 1311. And submit. And we get another gold star. So we've completed day 1. You can share this victory or return to your Advent calendar. So one more detail, just a little bit of cleanup. Let's go and find the code for day 1A. So we'll look for the definition of that, and it's here. So let's browse this. So we have these, whoops, didn't mean to do that. Do that again, back, browse. Okay, so the problem is this is not yet classified, so we're going to say that this is going to be an extension to the Advent of code, and save that. And let's look at the other unclassified, which is day 1, And we're also going to make that extension of the advent of code 2021. Save. And now let's just quickly go to the repository and commit the changes. I said I wasn't going to do this, but I'm just going to show very briefly. So we've added these two methods to array, and we've modified these two methods here. So here, finished day 1, and commit. And we're done. Okay, so I hope that was reasonably interesting for you. And we'll post the one for day 2 very shortly, probably either later today or tomorrow. Bye now. Take care.
Bye.